Loading snacks.
What it do, snackers, snackets, and snack X's. Your boy Gage is here with the homie jokes.
Yo,
Dang, not two? We only get one
I
yo?
don't know. Got to change it up a little bit.
Okay.
Keep people on their toes.
Two peace signs, one yo. You know what I'm saying? Is how jokes is feeling right now. You are now tuned into the Loading Snacks Movie Club discussion of Batman Begins. Now, jokes.
Mhm.
It is kind of fitting that this is the movie of the month because we are preparing to do our top 10 live action theatrically released DC films in the next couple of weeks, a couple of times over the next couple of
I
weeks.
know.
And so look, this is, it's kind of good to kind of go back and refresh, some of our memories on some of the films and things like that. And I think that sometimes when you do that, you look with a little bit of a different eye and listen with a little bit of a different ear and maybe see and or hear things that, are a little bit different, or maybe you have a different kind of appreciation for overall. So I find it really fitting. This movie is 20 years old, Joe.
No.
Which is crazy, dog. It is crazy for Batman Begins to be 20 years old. This movie released June 15th, 2005. I mean, you were in high school,
Yep.
which again, in and of itself, kind of crazy. Did you see this in the theater?
I did go see this in theater.
Okay. Well, I think I lost part of my audio here. Having seen it in the theater, do you remember what it was like seeing it the first time in the theater?
Honestly, I don't. But I feel like we hadn't gotten to like the Iron Man, like that kind of like superhero revitalization type of thing with the MCU starting out just yet. But if I remember right, like I think this was kind of like an average go. There was nothing like, it wasn't
Right.
there wasn't cosplayers, nothing like that, like how like a lot of the things that we go to now we see these type of things. It was almost just like more of a casual viewing type of thing.
Well, I mean, not for me.
You saw that at midnight, didn't you?
Of course I did. Of course I did. This is you got to remember, this was like prime, like Best Buy days. Like we were doing that. It was like, I'm going to the theater and I'm getting like 30 tickets. We're all going, like we're going. And it was definitely like, this was, people showed up, you know what I mean? With some costumes. These were midnight shows. This is how we did it. And it was a big deal because there hadn't been a Batman movie in so long. In the theater. So, it was a big deal. And I remember the lead up to this movie getting ready to come out and just like the hype behind the trailers and just all that kind of stuff. And so I remember going into it with a lot of excitement and really high expectations. And it being like, I feel like at the time, a really important moment, right, for movies and truthfully for I guess for the superhero genre, if you will. It's kind of a big deal. And then there was the cast. And I remember them saying that Christian Bale was going to be Batman and being like, dog, I don't know.
I wasn't sure.
Dog, I don't know. I feel like a lot of people were like that, but I remember having discussions with people and being like, "Yeah," but I feel like people felt exactly the same way, you know, about Michael Keaton, and just being like, "Michael Keaton, yeah, like Mr. Mom, dog, like this, he's gonna be Batman." Like, I remember that. This cast though is a pretty all-star cast. So let's kind of go through the cast if you're cool with that.
Dig it.
So obviously Christian Bale
Mm-hmm.
playing Batman, Bruce Wayne. You have Michael Caine playing Alfred. Um, and I'll be honest, might be my favorite Alfred. Um, might be my favorite live action Alfred. Let me be, you know what I mean? Um, Liam Neeson as Ra's al Ghul. I'll be honest, I'm still not sure I'm sold on that. But we
Mm.
we can we can get to that. Um, Katie Holmes is Rachel Dawes. Look, I'm gonna keep it a buck. As much of what I know about Batman and Batman lore and so forth, Rachel Dawes is a completely new character to me. I feel like she was made up for this
I
movie.
believe that character was made for the movies, if I wasn't mistaken.
Yeah,
Because no, Rachel didn't exist. Like, they never really dove into like Bruce having childhood friends like that in a lot of
no.
scenarios. Because I mean, I don't want to say it's irrelevant, but for tragic backstory, Batman. That's kind of the pieces. Because I guess they didn't want to read them.
Yeah, and I don't even know if I would quite give them friend status as much as like, well, her mom was like the maid. You know what I'm saying? Or whatever. Like, so she was there by default. Um, Gary Oldman as Detective James Gordon, later Sergeant James Gordon. Now, first of all, I love Gary Oldman.
Mm,
And I also think that Gary Oldman he might be my favorite Gordon.
Gordon. I'm not mad at you on that one.
I don't know if anybody else has been able to touch this joint. Um,
I feel like no one's had the time enough to establish themselves as Alfred outside of
well, you mean it's Gordon.
yeah or Gordon. Yeah.
Here's what I'll say. I can't think of his name, but the dude that played Gordon in the show Gotham,
Mm-hmm.
I liked him a lot. But he's super young Gordon, and it's not the Gordon that I picture when I think of Gordon from comics or from this is Gordon throughout Bruce's childhood, and so he's a much younger and a very different Gordon. I do like that dude, and I think Gotham is a really, really underrated show. Like, I don't think that show gets quite enough credit, and I feel like it doesn't get credit because it just doesn't fit into the canon anywhere. But I think it's dope. Cillian Murphy as Scarecrow,
Mm-hmm.
or Dr. Jonathan Crane, I think is a good
I thought it was a good
selection.
fit. I
I
thought it was
think
a
it's
good fit.
solid. Um, I think the only person who I feel like it's worth getting into is Morgan Freeman as Lucius Fox.
Mm-hmm.
There are some other names that are in there. Rucker Hauer, which might not mean anything to you, but Rucker Hauer is an important name from movies from my childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, he has a couple of like cult classics in the background that just kind of elevated him for me. Um, but I mean, again, for all intents and purposes, all star cast. Um, this movie when it came out, I think was met sort of in the middle. Again, I think there were very high expectations, partially because Christopher Nolan was doing this film, and I'm a fan of Nolan. And you know how I feel about the trilogy as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
I like Nolan's work. I'm gonna say this now to get it out of the way, because it honestly isn't really relevant anymore outside of this. But as a fan of Nolan and Nolan's work, um, like Memento was one of my favorite movies. And at the time that this movie came out, finding out that he was going to be the person that was doing this, it was exciting,
Mm-hmm.
but I wasn't sure exactly what that, what that really meant. And I still sit in a place where I feel like of all the movies that Christopher Nolan has made, these three films are his worst three movies.
Mm-hmm.
That's just
And
how
it's
I
not
feel
even saying,
about it.
and it's not saying it in a bad way. Like I get what you're saying with just like the caliber that he has done in those movies. It's just this goes at the bottom of the totem pole, unfortunately.
Yeah, I just think that the freedom that he exhibits as not only a cinematographer and a director, but as a storyteller
Mm-hmm.
is is so important to the kind of work that he does, that it's just very difficult for him to beat what he can do when he has
Mm-hmm.
that freedom, when he's boxed into the confines of a story that already exists and having to tell, that story. And not there are definitely visual flares that are in this that I think definitely speak Nolan, in terms of like
Mm-hmm.
what it looks like when the fear toxin, you know what I mean, takes effect on people. That kind of stuff is definitely there, and you can certainly see Nolan's his chops. You know what I mean, as a
Mm-hmm.
director. But I still don't think as a whole that it holds up to just some of the other stuff that he's done. When you look at stuff like The Prestige, and like it just, not to get too deep into that, but Metacritic has this movie at a 70 out of 100. Rotten Tomatoes has it as a 7.7 out of 10, so almost an 8.
Mm-hmm.
Um, before we get into a discussion, kind of having gotten some background and thought about all of that, remembering seeing it in theaters and kind of like kicking some of the nostalgia dust off, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, right now, pre-discussion, where do you sit in terms of how you would grade this film?
Um, right now, I feel like it's hard for me. Like I had a score before, and then rewatching it again. Like honestly, I think I'm probably at an 8. Like I think it's
Okay.
solid.
Yeah.
Um, beforehand I was at a 9, and I think that was trying to think of how rewatching it. I was like, hey, this was a pretty solid story overall,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
it's knowing now Nolan's background. Like beforehand, like when I first originally saw this in theaters, for me, Christopher Nolan's name just didn't really resonate. It didn't mean nothing really behind it.
Right.
Nowadays, it's a completely reverse type of thing. Because seeing it, I didn't know what I was necessarily getting. Because it wasn't like over the top as like the Tim Burton type of things, because it was
Hmm.
trying to ground it a lot more, and so it
Hmm.
was more of a realistic type of thing. Um, right, you know what? I'm gonna say 8.5. I normally don't go the half step, but right now I'm gonna say 8.5 because I'm a little undecided. Undecided right now. It's probably till we get to the end of the conversation.
Um, is there something that I guess what about it is a thing for you?
Mhm.
What? Because you said you were at a 9, so you're only talking really like a half step.
I have a point. It
So
is
like,
nothing. There's nothing
what
bad.
changed?
I think now, crazy. I think I am going to stick with the 9. I feel like I appreciate this movie more now than I did when it first came out.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
I think I'm at mine. I think I'm going to say it a 9 for right now, because when it first came out, I was really expecting more of, like, I guess you could say, the theatrics of how, after, watching Tim Burton's Batman, watching the animated series, like some of the more over the top type of things.
Sure.
But now with it, being more of a grounded storytelling, really knowing how Christopher Nolan works, I feel like that's pushed that number up. Because by all means, at one point, this was my least favorite, crazy enough to say, of the three movies.
Okay.
And I think it took a couple of rewatches to get to that point where I was like, okay, I was tripping a little bit.
I think there are a lot of other people who would
Yeah.
agree with you on that. I think there are a lot of people who feel that way, actually. Did I
Yeah,
lose?
like,
Yeah. Yeah,
no,
I
no,
think there's a lot of
you're
people who
still,
feel that way. My bad. Yeah, I think there's a
yeah,
lot of people
no.
who feel that way.
And I think it's my opinion. Like, I just want to stick to this one. My opinions have changed a little bit about the third movie as well, too. I'm not going to dig deep into that. But
Sure.
overall, I think this movie, after rewatching it this go around, I think pushed it up a little bit more than what it was. Because I kind of forgot some of the stuff. And as I started watching it, I was just like, oh, okay. And I think that probably now these are the different set of eyes is really watching it. So I'm looking for certain things and all that. So I think I'm at a 9. I think I'm at a 9.
That's that means you're exactly where you were in the beginning anyway.
Uh-huh.
So all right.
Listen, I
See,
don't know. It's
it's
one of those
hard. Like
things.
all right.
Yeah.
So it sounds like we need to have the discussion,
Yeah.
really. Because all right, so here's the thing. I, let me I'm going to ask a couple of questions that I feel like might help us kind of sort through it. And
Mhm.
I want to say this. I think that it is very difficult to watch a movie like this that is, one, part of a trilogy, but also part of something that is so much bigger than it
Mhm.
in terms of Batman as a character. How many people know him? What the expectations are. I think it's very difficult to look at this film in a canister, like in its own, just like in a vacuum, and act like those things don't matter or don't have an effect on what this film is, because you can't really watch it without comparing it to other things, and you can't,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? Like it just, it's part of it. So I guess my first question for you is,
Mm.
when you think of this movie and having recently rewatched it, where does this film sit for you in the overall pantheon of Batman?
Ooh.
When we're talking comics, animation, live action, TV, across all things, where does this film sit for you? How important does it feel like the film is? You know what I mean? It Where does it sit for you?
Without digging too deep, like, I would put this, let's say, like, we've had at least, I guess it's safe to say, we've had 10 Batman movies. Have we had?
Uh,
Uh,
sure.
I'm trying to think, like, Tim Burton, we had the originals, like Adam West did one. So I would say this would kind of sit about in the middle of the pack of, if we include like the animated series and everything in there, I feel like this one would probably sit about midway in the pack. Um, I
Of
feel like
everything.
this, of everything, I feel like kind of goes midway in the pack. I think they did a good job overall of, one, creating a new story while still keeping, some of the familiar faces from the Batman franchise in here and giving them different spins. Like, uh Scarecrow is not really, this mythological dude that can like make himself become gigantic and all this type of stuff. Like, we're gonna make this grounded. Hey, listen, he has this drug that makes you hallucinate and do all this stuff that really gives you that appearance that, this Scarecrow is really super scary and dangerous. So I think doing those type of things and letting us see these characters in a different light is one thing that resonates with me a lot. And that's kind of the thing with the whole trilogy that I've enjoyed. I think it's hard to take a character like a Batman and trying to ground him, because you have to, like, you're taking the kiss, like, regardless, he's a billionaire with all this money at his disposal that clearly he flaunts that in this movie to make sure, like, we got to make the bat suit. All right, cool. We got to order these parts, but in order for people to not get suspicious, we got to order a bulk order of this. How many do we need? Like 10,000? Like, so
make it right. Make it make sense.
Make it make sense.
Yeah.
So seeing him actually, flaunt and use that money in ways, having Alfred tell him, hey, listen, if you're going to be out and doing all this type of stuff, you're going to have some type of excuses. I don't think Alfred has ever actually had that conversation with Bruce at a point in time. And maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's happened, but, I don't. I mean, I feel like it happens all the time. I mean, I think that Alfred grounds.
Yeah.
Grounds Bruce.
You
know what I mean? To some extent. And is a little bit of, like, Alfred is kind of the Jiminy Cricket for Batman. Like, he's that conscience that's kind of in his ear in some ways. I mean, look, I think that this movie is probably at the top of the Batman pantheon, like just below animated series. For this film, like maybe third to, like,
animated series.
Right now, I feel like if I have to look at everything, obviously you have comics, which again, in my personal opinion, can be hit or miss. Like, there are so many stories and so many different writers and so many whatever that, like, comics can be hit or miss, but obviously they're like the main thing. But I'm not even positive that the comics at this point have become more important than animated series. I honestly feel like what Tim Burton did with those first couple of films and then the animated series following that up, giving the freedom to be dark and grittier and more serious for a child but adult audience, has really given a lot of freedom for creators who are creating for Batman in a public space. And when I say that, I mean not in comic books. Comic books are still really niche. They're like, there are so many people who know, quote unquote, everything there is to know about Batman who have never picked up a comic book, right? And so I just think that, like, animated series, along with, like, Justice League, like, I kind of put those in the same boat. I actually feel like that's top tier and might actually be the most important thing in the entire pantheon of all things Batman. Is animated series.
I will agree with that.
I think that even though animated series borrowed so much from what Burton did, I think Burton comes under that, just because the series was able to reach so many more people because it was like daytime TV. And then I'd probably put this film specifically directly under that, like under at least the 89 Batman, maybe under the first two, Batman Returns and 89. In the grand scheme of things, I think that this film sits there because I actually do feel like this film successfully reestablishes Batman to the main public as a character that counts and that matters. prior to this, it had been a long time outside of animation that anybody cared about Batman for real. Like it was like, you know what I mean? Um, it is. It is. I think it's an important film, and I think it puts making this film like you're up against a lot. Like there's a lot on your shoulders in terms of establishing that. And I think that having said that, I think one of the things that they did is smartly they made Gotham like let's in terms of the setting of this film, like we know it's Gotham City, but it's Chicago and it feels like Chicago. And it, you know, they shot a lot of it in Chicago. And they Nolan, I think by establishing that world compared to what we had seen in animation, even in live action, Gotham has always looked like this strange just juxtaposition of like 1930s like film noir mixed with very high tech, like, you know what I mean, like we have cell phones and we have like color TV and we have whatever, but all of the art deco and all of that kind of stuff. And this was like, nah, we're not doing any of that, right? Like we're not building sets, quote unquote, to tell you how real the city is. We're just going to use a real city. And that setting, I think, goes a really long way in terms of establishing that this is what it would feel like if Batman was a real person in the world that we live in right now. If Batman existed in 2005, I think they do a good job of doing that. What do you think about the setting and kind of how it plays a role in the film?
Oh, majorly. I think because a lot of areas. So, we see when they do a lot of the overhead shots. You see the city. You see Wayne Enterprise. Like you see this. I guess because I don't want to say upscale, but it looks like it's not run down and all this. But then when we get to go see the true side of Gotham, like when Bruce came back the first time, Rachel took him down to like the underside of the city, and it's like, yo, it's run down here. Like this is the stuff that a lot of people don't see, like especially like people like you, because you come from money, so you don't really come down here. You don't look at this, but this city is on the decline. So I think in seeing that, like it's crazy to think that that's a real thing. Like they're showing that in the movie, but that's kind of a real thing. So I think that resonates. Seeing, trying to say, when he first gave, when he was trying to disappear and he gave the homeless guy his jacket, like this is kind of sometimes real life. When you walk down the street there, you may see a situation like this, but overall, I think it showed both the life of the city, the train / metro, it looks super high tech, being that it's like, it's above ground. It's on that train track that goes directly to Wayne Enterprises. But then when you get inside the train, like that first time we see, like when Rachel is on it, like that joint looks like just like a rundown metro train that has just been around for decades and decades. So it's kind of like, the city gives off this, hey, things are high tech here. Things look good. But when you really get in the city, it's kind of like, hey, yo, what is all that stuff that they showed us, like commercials and all this type of stuff? Because that city doesn't really look like it. So I think that helped.
I agree.
The overall atmosphere for the entire movie when they were in Gotham, that is.
Yeah, I mean, we're used to seeing Gotham as the, like, again, kind of gritty and beat up and whatever, but also not seeing it as, again, like feeling like an old 1930s, whatever. Like I just feel like it it does the necessary job of revitalizing Batman and making Batman important to younger people, but also important to people who are older who like remembered Batman at the time from the old films and even from animation, but that kind of needed to see that it grew up with them or that that it was allowed to. And so I just feel like that was really important. And I honestly think that the setting, the chosen version of Gotham is very, it actually might be the most important character in the movie is the setting, because I just feel like it adds to the realism. Having said that, let's talk about Christian Bale as Batman and as Bruce Wayne. Um, Again, going into it, I was like, I don't know. I mean, I didn't hate Christian Bale. He had done some things that I liked, whatever. I wasn't sure, but I was already willing to give the benefit of the doubt just because, again, like I come from Keaton Batman, and I'm like, Slim, he did it. I actually think that Christian Bale in this movie does a really good job. I think that in this film, he is allowed to play Bruce Wayne on the search for who he's going to be, on the rise of kind of figuring things out and making the decisions, and then in the mindset of having to like decidedly play both parts, right? Like I have to be Batman. I'm not willing to give that up, but I do recognize that I have to be Bruce Wayne. And even though in my head I've decided that the Batman part is more important and I don't really care about the Bruce Wayne part, man, there are moments in here where, again, Michael Caine is Alfred, Christian Bale playing off of him, and Alfred saying to him, don't sully the name, right? Like, don't make this name something that's trash now. And, Bruce kind of acting like, who cares? It doesn't matter. And he's like, it matters to me. I care. It is the only thing that's left of your father. And the legacy that he built is the name. And if you tarnish that, then you tarnish him. And like those moments, being able to have moments like that are the moments that are really, really smart and very well written in terms of understanding the frustration that Bruce has, but Alfred being someone who can reel him back in with just an honest to goodness statement, like, yo, hold on. Like this, it does mean something. Like you might feel like the name is dead, like it died with your father, but you're the one who's killing it, right? Because people still see the name and hear the name and see the tower, and they still think really, really highly. And you're, about to ruin that. And I just think that, man, I just feel like they really allowed him to play with it, and deal with the conflict that comes with having to try to live two lives. And while I'm not a I'm not a fan. Like I don't know. I don't I don't know what it is. Obviously, ever since Michael Keaton did it with his Batman voice, like everybody else is, I guess, felt like they have to do it too. I don't know if I love that part. You know what I mean, so to speak. But I get it. You know what I mean? Like you got to do something to try to hide how you sound, yeah, or whatever. And it's it's I think he does a really solid job. Like I think that he sells it. I think that he sells Batman as well as sells Bruce Wayne. Would you agree, or where are you on it?
I 100% agree with you.
Okay.
I loved how we kind of got to see, I don't want to say actually, the birth of Bruce Wayne. Because
Yeah.
we get to see him as this, coming out of, the training from the League of Shadows, coming back to Gotham, wanting to, right the wrongs. Like, the care of the Bruce Wayne side initially was not there. It was literally, you know what? I'm coming back
Right.
to this city. I'm going to use my name to get me to the places where I need to be at. But otherwise, I got to go on as Batman and do these things. And just like you said, Alfred giving them these little talks throughout the whole entire thing. Like the first night he went out and he was knocked out. And he was like, yeah, if you're going to come home with these bruises and all this, like after every single thing, like we got to come up with something out here. And he's like, I don't care. And he just gets down and just starts doing the push-ups. It's like, yo, you got to figure this stuff out. So this is further down, but like when we see him, get reintroduced to Ra's al Ghul coming back, and he's in that more of that Batman mode. But when it came time to making sure he could protect everybody that was in his house for his birthday party, how he immediately, like you could see it, where he shifted gears and literally went into the drunken billionaire version of himself to kind of sell it to be like, I got to get these people out of here. And so I got to turn that Bruce Wayne on. And it was just seeing how different stages through the movie, we saw these different, almost like small different variations of Bruce Wayne trying to get him to figure out what was going to be the perfect version of it. Alfred told him, like, you got to be doing something out here. Like, going, like, he went to the hotel, brought the two girls with him. Like, no one kind of knows what to really expect. They go make a new swimming pool out here. And he like, let me go ahead and flaunt this money right quick. Write this check.
So my man said, I'm buying this hotel and I'm changing the rules about the pool. I said, oh, okay.
That is Bruce
All right,
Wayne.
Bruce.
That is that Bruce Wayne side that you got to flex to kind of separate the difference.
It is, but it isn't. It's like it's young Bruce Wayne with a lot of money. It is. I think it was him being a nepo baby before nepo babies really became a thing. Like that's only recently been a thing, but it really is him. As a very young man, early 20s.
It was 30 because you know what? That was something I didn't catch originally. When when Rachel comes to drop off his birthday gift, you can actually see the 30 in the background. I didn't notice that at first. Right. And immediately I was just like, oh my God, he was 30 at that point. I was like, okay. Okay, he can be out here, throwing hands. Then this goes into like where the current, like the trilogy ends up at. But
well, it makes a lot more sense in terms of them again trying to establish a level of real in a world where this man went into like the Himalayas and studied with ninjas. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like you have to establish a certain level of real, but it's like, how long was he gone? What was he really doing? You got to remember that when he first came back, he was like, oh, well, I'm not going back to school.
Valid,
you know what I mean? And it's like, I don't. So he was still young.
He was like, probably a little bit younger than that. You're right. You're definitely right on that side. Because they did there was a little time jumping in the beginning part of it, and they really didn't, fully establish. Like clearly you could tell, like you said, not going back to school to coming back to training with the League of Shadows. We jumped back once more. So there was a couple of those time shifts that I thought could have been a little bit more fleshed out. I guess they just wanted you to be able to understand that we were jumping between places.
Yeah, because how long did they say he was gone for? Like they thought
7
he was
years?
dead. Remember, he was dead. And that was like 7 years. That's a long time. It was like
7 years or something. Yeah.
Right. So, man's just showed back up like, oh yeah, well, I'm not dead. You know what I mean? And then like handling kind of the business side of things. Like I came back, okay, I'm not really looking to I'm not trying to take the business over from you. It's cool. Public, companies going public. That's cool. I just want to earn my piece. I just want a job. I just want to do something, put my hands on something, and he'll be like, I put, and it's like, yeah, you can go down to engineering. And of course, that's where he meets Lucius, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
again, Lucius is a person who's been around forever. He is now introduced to somebody who knew his father, and he gets to talk to somebody
Mm-hmm.
besides Alfred, right?
Mm-hmm.
That knew his father and is willing to give him some, honest to goodness, real insight about what his father was doing and what he was working towards, and what kind of a man that he was. Because like, dog, when you're 8, you don't really
Right.
know who your parents are. Like, you don't know anything about them for real. Like, you don't know what they did or how they grew up, or like, you just don't know any of that kind of stuff, right? Um, and so kind of like walking through him gaining the knowledge of who his father was, who his grandparents
Mm-hmm.
were. Like when they first go down and discover the cave, and they're like, and Alfred's like, your grandfather, used to bring people through here as part of the Underground Railroad, and that
Mm-hmm.
explains why they actually have an elevator that goes up to the house, and like why it's hidden already, and you know what I mean, that kind of thing, and like establishes his family as people who were trying to do something for the greater good,
Mm-hmm.
kind of, and like breaking the law in some places in order to do it, and that giving him the space to be like, I might have to operate outside of the law in order to get things done, quote unquote, the right way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that you kind of have to. I think that they do such a really good job of establishing all the pieces that are necessary for you to accept a certain level of reality with it, right? This is more of a grounded, this is what it would be like, this is what it would
Mm-hmm.
take. So here's this guy who works in engineering. Yes, they have all this money. We came up with this stuff. They shelved it. They didn't like it. It was too expensive. They didn't think their soldiers' lives were worth it, so we didn't put this body armor into play.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the body armor, right? We're gonna order these pieces, but we're gonna have to order them separately so people don't realize that we're doing the face mask and the ears together or whatever. And so I'm gonna need 10,000 of these and 10,000 of these. And
Mm-hmm.
then, oh, what is this vehicle? It's back. Oh, you wouldn't be interested in
What
that.
is
You
the
know what I
miss?
mean? Like, you know, um, here's what it was for. This is what it was designed for. This is why we had it, but it ended up
They
not working
never.
out. We didn't do any more. You know what I mean? And like those kinds of things, just kind of using the opportunity to establish where all the equipment came from, what the
Mm-hmm.
equipment was used for, why he would have access to it, and not making Bruce Wayne some kind of ridiculous genius who just like invented all this stuff himself because he got, you know what I mean? Like really being like, no, he has somebody else that's really smart that kind of did it. And there were other people who kind of put this stuff into play, and it just kind of has
Mm-hmm.
been shelved for so long that like who would really recognize it, and like going through the idea of like, all right, well, we're gonna get it, but then we're gonna modify it, we're gonna spray paint it, we're gonna put some lights in down here and run a generator down here, and all of the kinds of things that become the things that are doing what the namesake of the film is, which
Mm-hmm.
is Batman Begins.
Begins.
So, yes, let's reestablish it with an origin story. Let's really kind of put all of it. And the reason why, while I am not a huge fan of origin stories, a lot of times for a lot of these characters, because we've seen it over and over
Over and
again.
over
Like,
again.
who doesn't know how Batman becomes Batman, or why Batman chose bats, or what happened to his parents, or whatever? Like, who doesn't know that? However, if you are reestablishing that Batman is real, right? And where all of this stuff came from and who he is as a character, and you're doing so with the hopes that you're going to get to do another movie and then maybe
Mm-hmm.
another movie, right? You need those grounded pieces of the origin story in order to be able to successfully get people bought in
Mm-hmm.
to your suspension of disbelief as it exists within the confines of the story that you're telling. And I think they do an incredible job of doing it. Like it just feels so right. So I think there are certain things they do super well. There are changes they make, like traditionally, Bruce is with his parents. They go to see like Zorro,
Mm-hmm.
and he In this case, they go to a play, and in this play, there are bats, and the bats scare him and remind him of what happened to him when he fell, and this fear of bats that he has. So now he asks to leave, and it establishes much more directly that Bruce feels responsible for his parents' death because he's the one that asked to leave because he was afraid of the bats, right? And because he wasn't man enough to face his fear, even though he was a child at the time, because he couldn't deal with it, that's the reason why his parents are dead. And as an 8-year-old kid, up until the point where you're ready to go out, and the only thing you can think about is finding the person who killed your parents and killing them yourself, right? Or getting your revenge or whatever it is, right? You are doing those things to erase the guilt that you feel because you feel like you're actually responsible for it. And it would be very easy to be like, well, yeah, they went to go see Zorro because that was his favorite thing and that was what he wanted to watch. And he could have felt a certain sense of responsibility coming from that. But nah, to actually tie it back to bats again and be like, well, nah, it's because of that and that fear that I had that really, drove me in that direction. And I just think they do a really good job of that, and those kinds of story beat changes I think make sense. Um, Establishing the flower that Roz gives him that messes with his fear, and that being the flower that they use to make the toxin later on down the line that they're trying to disperse through the city or whatever is like it ties really well. You know what I mean? Together. Um, I think one of my biggest issues with this movie has always been that I've always felt that there's no real villain in this movie. I think that's part of the problem that I have with the movie. Um, I think it's a good movie, and I think all of the parts that are moving, for the most part, do a really good job in telling and selling the story. But I also feel like there might be a little bit too much going on with Ra's al Ghul and the Scarecrow, and I just think that, and I don't. It's like it's weird to think like Falcone is a Falcone
As
is a but he is a villain, but he's not really Bruce's villain,
he's
so
more
to
of a
speak.
pawn. Yeah, he's like a pawn in the whole entire thing. Like he's being used to, get the drugs in, and then on top of getting the drugs in, like there's another thing overlapping on top of the drugs piece of it for it. So it's all interwoven, and I think it's a very good job at doing it because in a lot of movies you would end up as you have these moving pieces in here. Some of it gets lost in translation, but I think they did a very
Yeah,
good job at keeping everything interwoven in certain shapes, and so you understand like you wouldn't necessarily understand like when the machine goes missing. They have like one moment where they really talk about it, like we see it in action, and then we see the
hmm
news that it's gone missing, and then we don't go back and revisit that until when they're in the house, Bruce is having the conversation with Lucius, and then
yeah,
it's just like, oh, well, a machine did so happenly go missing that would change the whole scenario. So I
right,
think being able to have those moments and still being able to immediately tie them back together when it comes time for it, very well job done. Because some movies
yeah,
nowadays, it'd have gotten left on the chopping room floor, and we would be like, there's something not tied together here that's leaving
yeah.
things apart here.
I mean, I will tell you that I'm still of the mind that as good as this movie is, and as great of a job as I feel it does tying things together and making it feel grounded and making it feel like this is how Batman could do it if Batman was gonna do it and he was just this really rich dude with untapped resources or whatever, it still feels like it it escalates very, very quickly at the end and becomes a comic book movie at the
Mm-hmm.
end. I feel like the entire movie, even with like the ninja thing and the like studying and learning and getting whatever, like even that part of it feels just grounded enough that you're like, all right, you know what I mean? Like, all right. But at the end, bro, when it's like, we're gonna, I don't know, bro, it just gets over the top. lift the open all the bridges, don't let anybody in the city, trap all the people in the city, and the smoke is everywhere. So the entire city is going crazy, and people are seeing like Ichabod Crane riding around on a horse, like you know what I mean, and like it's just it gets kind of stupid, bro. Like it does get kind of stupid. Um, the whole city just is going nuts, and the cops are just stuck on the outside. It just feels like everything they did to establish how grounded it is and how whatever, it just feels like all of that kind of went out the window because they needed to finish the movie and they needed to feel like it was a big deal. You know what I mean? So let's take the train that his father worked on. Let's put him on the train. You ride the thing into the city and go. You know what I mean? Like, Ra's al Ghul ought to know better than to leave all the lessons that he was teaching. If you don't kill that boy, like it gets kind of dumb. Like, you know what I mean? Like it just gets, you're in the house is on fire. The entire League of Shadows is in the city. You've already infiltrated everything. This should be a no-brainer. Like it just really feels like it should all really be done. And the little bit of comedy that comes in, we put Gordon in the Batmobile, and he's whatever, and like Rachel's running around with the little kid from Game of Thrones or whatever, and like trying to, just trying.
It all started when Bat's like, "Can you drive stick?" I'm like,
yeah, it gets once that happens, bro, we're out. You know what I'm saying? Like we're just doing whatever now. Like it just gets a little too bananas, and then all of a sudden it's over, and it's just like we just calm and we back at the house, and Rachel comes to see him, and the whole house, Wayne Manor burned to the ground, bro. Like we didn't, like we really like, I don't know, dog. It feels like it gets so over the top so fast, and it's Roz and Scarecrow running amok, and all the entire criminal population is free and is running the streets. The police can't do nothing. Like it's the dumbest, bro. It just gets, it turns into a comic book. It turns into a comic book, and it turns into like something they could get away with in animation, that it just feels like it takes all of the work that they did to get it grounded and keep it grounded and establish it as like very real worldy, just kind of feels like it goes out the window. And that, that puts me in a place where this movie could never be better than like a 7.5. Just because you did so much good work.
Right.
And then at the end, you blew it. Like you blew it. Like it just doesn't.
I feel the opposite. Like I felt like adding in a little bit of the comic element to it in doing this, I feel like it worked. I felt like it was enough that it didn't go super well over the top, but it was, don't get me wrong, it started pushing it at times when certain things, like, I get it, but I think just having a little bit of that element within, like I said, it's supposed to be more grounded, but at the same time, it's still saying that, like, listen, I can't say that it's a comic book movie, but it's based off of a character from a comic book. But
but dog, like it just gets dumb because it's like, all right, I know why Rachel wasn't affected by the fear toxin. I get it. She'd already had it. My man gave it an antidote, which I don't think they ever established that the antidote. I guess the antidote makes you immune. Whatever. Sure. I get it. That little boy should have turned around and tried to bite her face off.
Now that
he should have tried to bite her. He was cowering and holding her like he knew who she was and like everything was cool. And I'm like, something's not right about this. You know what I'm saying?
I could get the cowering. Like, if for whatever reason he wasn't looking at her, like obviously he's looking at, all the people that are coming towards them probably look like the aliens or whatever you want to say. And
zombies
just he never turned,
or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, he never turned and looked at her. And that could be the only thing I could think of, is that maybe he was thinking, like obviously we don't get really nothing established about like his parents or anything like that. For all we know, his parents ain't make it out the fog by the time all that happened in there for it.
Oh no, his
So
parents definitely killed some people. Hey, Gotham City is trash, bro. Like, my man crashed the entire monorail, crashed the joint into the building. Like, somehow they managed to make it so that the center of Gotham, and maybe if they had established this at some other point during the movie, but this is the thing. The end of this movie feels like The Wizard of Oz. Like it just feels so fake. It feels like they are going to the Oz castle, like the tower.
they
Like it
do.
just feels like we're, you know what I mean? This all like, oh no, if the train makes it here, it's gonna send all the water across the whole city. Like it just
They
gets
made sure to
very.
say that a good couple of times in there. Like this can't make it here because if it makes it here, it's going to cause a chain reaction. It's going to set off everything.
But dog, like, why are you staying in that room, bro? Like, why are you in that room? Like, you
This is
can't do anything. Like, you
that's their
can't.
job.
You control the water, not the monorail. You can't if you know it's gonna blow. Like, you didn't try to get out. It's just really. I, I don't know, bro. Also, Bruce Wayne can't beat Ra's al Ghul, dog.
He should.
Raja like had my man's number, dog. Like it just, I don't. It's you like. I'm just not. It's very difficult for me because again, like, and I'm not even saying that they're not playing again within the confines of their own rules, but I do feel like to some extent it gets so over the top, and I feel like it's like that because when you establish that you have um a somewhat a realistic version of this character, of these characters, I feel like the things that he should be faced with up front as Batman maybe shouldn't be quite so big. Maybe the stakes don't need to be quite this high just yet. Because you're talking about this man who really only cares about Gotham. Let's make it very clear. Batman doesn't actually care about the whole world. He cares about Gotham. That's
Gotham.
where it
That's
starts.
it.
That's what matters
That's,
for him, right? And I'm not saying that later on he doesn't get involved with the Justice League or whatever and become somebody who needs to like, well, we got to save the planet because obviously Gotham's a part of the planet. But like for it becomes over the top when the idea is in order for us to take over the world, in order for us to restart and destroy the planet, we have to start at Gotham. Like that's the place where we need to go in order to do it. Just feels so comic book because there's nothing about Gotham. Who cares about Gotham? Like what is the purpose of it happening in Gotham? Of all the places you could choose to do it, why would you choose Gotham instead of Metropolis? Why would you choose Gotham instead? Like, just it doesn't. So it just like when the plot thickens, it thickens in a way that's like, okay, cool, thicker plot, but why? You understand what I'm saying? And it just is. It also feels like there's pieces of like Ra's al Ghul as a character, as a story that make him choose Batman. Like, I'm not really. It's not really about Gotham. It's actually more about you. And it is about your father being in my way previously. And I don't think they do a great job of maybe establishing that part to some extent of it. And so I think that when it gets to the point where they're like, yeah, we like again, is there really a reason for Roz to show up in full force with the entire League of Shadows to a party that Bruce Wayne's throwing at his house? Clearly, Bruce Wayne is distracted, and you know he's there. It's the perfect time for you to put a weapon on a train and run the train into
and just
Wayne
do it.
Tower. Don't tell him that's what you're doing. Don't tell him we're here to destroy whatever. We didn't really come to try to talk you into being my right hand man. Come join us, be a part of the whatever. Slim, you left me for dead. You know what I mean? Like whatever.
Now, that was the one line. Now, nothing really bothered me other than that, because when he told him that, you burnt my house down and left me for dead, he technically didn't.
Correct.
Because
he saved you.
He saved you.
Well, he saved him, but he thought he killed Roz because he thought the other dude was Roz.
Was actually Roz. So valid
That's what he
on
was
that
saying.
side. Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's what he was saying. And again, but my point in that is, why are we at Bruce Wayne's house? Like, why are we here? Bruce Wayne was going into this party to act like he had to be at this party. And if you would just put the weapon on the train and drove the train into Wayne Tower, it's
Probably would have
over.
succeeded.
And then you can just show up at his house and kill him later. Like, it just doesn't. Or for real, send a couple of henchmen to just go do Slim in, because you know. And even Batman said to him, like as if I can't take a couple of your lagoons or whatever. Like, I'll whoop your goons kind of thing. All right. But then a pillar falls on him and the pillar's on fire and he just I don't know. Again, it just gets real comic book, and that breaks it for me. So I can't,
I got you.
7.5 jokes. 7.5. Well acted, well crafted, shot beautifully. From a cinematic standpoint, it's beautiful. It's Nolan. It's got Nolan all over it. The story just kind of falls apart for me at the end, and again, that breaks it for me, because the end is where you need to seal the deal. I could live with you messing up the beginning a little bit as you try to put all the pieces and put your chips in place or whatever. But like, having done that piece of it so well, and then kind of just being like, all right, we established everything, let's wild out. It just is kind of like, what are you doing? And so it breaks it for me. And so I think I like the movie, but it's I'd give it like a 7.5 max is where I'm at, and you're still sitting at what, 8.5?
I'm at my 9. Like, I feel like for the reasons that brought it down for you, didn't affect me as much. Like, I like the little extra, like the little small comic book type of things that you threw into it. To me, it didn't get super over the top. Like, other than like the train and like the city, they didn't have to utilize, the CG to make it a little more over. They tried to keep it as real as possible. So obviously those scenes come along and it's just like, hey y'all, we just got to throw CG at this, because we ain't gonna put no train on no thing and just derail it out of it. Like, I give them props that they did that, like, in the second movie, I was, blowing up a whole building to be able to incorporate in it. It's a little bit different than just taking a train and like just letting that derail in the middle of the city. So I don't know, but I like keeping a little bit of the comic book element into it.
That feels like it defeats the purpose of doing the movie and trying to ground it. Like, I think it's very difficult to step out of the comic book portion of it. I think if you're going to try to establish how Scarecrow works, Falcone, I think, is easy. I think that's why a show like Penguin works so well. Again, doing Roz and League of Shadows, and like, are you gonna lean into like, him being really old and being able to wrestle, like all that, like that again kind of pushes it. Like, we're ninjas and we can do this, that, and the third, and blah blah blah. But you kind of have to establish that he's able to do some things that other people can't do, or whatever, some mind over matter kind of things. But I don't know. It just feels like, to work that hard to establish it and then decide to like, all right, now we got to go big. It's go big or go home. There's a part of me that feels like Nolan's original version of the story probably wasn't that wild, and I feel like some WB exec sat down and watched and was like, we need more. You know what I'm saying? Like, do more, go harder. You know what I mean? Like, we're not going crazy enough. We're not doing, you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like even though all of the pieces are told well, I don't. Unlike the second film, where you have a villain for the whole film. Again, I'm not a big fan of that film, but this one, where you kind of jump from who is a villain versus who's a friend to what does this really mean? Okay, well, I guess we got to go back to establish Roz and but Crane is a thing, but we don't ever really have to deal with Crane. That's just he's kind of like a side thing, whatever. I don't know. I just feel like it throws a lot of pieces in there and they try to tie them together by being like, well, the fear toxin really isn't his thing. It's actually a League of Shadows thing. He just happens to be using it to, to do some. I don't know. I think there's a lot. However, I would recommend if people haven't seen this in a while, that they go back and watch it again. I still think it's a really good movie. I think it holds up. 20 years later. I totally think it's worth it. 7.5 for me, 9 for Jokes, which again, Jokes I think is a little, but it's your 9, not mine. So it is what it is. I want to thank you all for tuning in, for watching the movie club. We'll be back at the end of this month to finish out the year with our last movie club film of the year. Thank y'all for tuning in. We're out. Tool doesn't lose. Shut it down, Jokes.
Loading snacks.